Good evening and welcome to the Brewgooders episode 55, the Brewgooders League of Beer Comics and Erotic Poetry. Colin's going to start us off this week with something he's put together called Daffodils. Colin?
Narcissi, daffodil, the yellow, the white, the long stamen.
Right, amazing. Sorry.
You knew more about that than I was expecting.
I don't know. I hope everyone's all right. We're live on our Facebook channel, so please drop in comments and all that jazz if you want to say hi, if you've got questions for our guest, who this week we're really privileged to have Alan, who is the creator of Guin.
It feels weird being in the middle between the two of you, actually.
Yeah. He's the gentleman sporting merchandise.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Oh,
right?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great to be here. And beer in hand.
Yeah, I was going to say we're lucking out at the moment because we've got yet another guest who actually enjoys beer. We've had this a few times where we've had somebody and we're like, "Do you drink beer?" And they're like, "No," and you're like, "Great." Or you get somebody from the brewery who's like, "We get a brewery and then like, do you read comics?" And they're like, "No." And you're like, awesome. So you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and all that sort of stuff?
So I'm Alan Henderson, the creator of the webcomic The Penned Guin, which has been running for just over 7 years now, on a variety of different social media, and continues to have various collections put together, including a current Kickstarter that's running called Coincidence, which is probably why I'm here. In terms of the coincidences of things that come together with regard to the end of lockdown, etc.
So amazing. How has lockdown been for you?
Fine, to be honest. I work for one of the banks, so we quite often would work from home anyway. So it's just moved that from being the odd day here and there to more or less full time, and we will be working from home probably until the end of the year at this rate, in terms of our sort of return to the office and fitting the right number of people in at any point in time. We will not be the priority to get back in. There are people who are more important than us to get into the office.
What's it you do?
I work for a risk team for TSB, and we are involved in looking after a lot of the data analytics, or I look after one of the teams that looks after data analytics. So it sounds a lot more interesting than it really is, because the guys do all the interesting and hard work. I just point them in the right direction from time to time.
I'm assuming the Penned Guin is a bit of it takes you out of that side of your work. It's a release from all that.
100%. No, Penguin is entirely a hobby. It's one of these hobbies you have to tell the taxman about, but hey-ho. And my argument with Mrs. H has always been that it's it's a hobby, but it's cheaper than golf. In that if I played golf, I'd still go away for the weekend with the mates on a regular basis. You'd spend an awful lot of money on equipment. You'd buy all sorts of specialist magazines and everything like that.
But at least enjoy a beer or two as well.
You're describing comics still.
Well, by this point, you see, because you're a small press creator, you get to sell your comics at the end, and somebody gives you money back, and so actually it ends up being cheaper than golf, purely on that basis, ever so slightly. But, small press comics cheaper than golf. There's the other T-shirt I should make up at some point.
Yeah, good. Amazing. What's the Penned Guin then? For anybody that is, I discovered it at maybe, I can't remember the convention I was at last year, but I do think I picked up something off one of your stands. I know Colin's been a fan for quite a while as well, so I think he's been trying to get you on for a wee while, and we follow Penned Guin through our Twitter page, so sometimes things come up that I'm like, oh, that's amazing.
So the Penned Guin is funny little stories about funny little penguins, normally told in that sort of 3-panel newspaper strip style. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is say, let's create the newspaper funny comic in the Twitter feed or the Facebook feed or whatever your social media of choice is, in the same way that if you were flicking through a newspaper, you would come across a 3-panel strip. And that's all the Penguin is in terms of that. It does mean that you're trying to do it as a daily strip. As I say, so that means it's been running for just over 7 years. So there's just shy of about 1,900 strips up online.
Wow.
Mix of the daily ones and some that are slightly bigger that I call the weekend strips, as you would sort of expect to see in a Sunday newspaper rather than the dailies. And yeah, it's about keeping it as something really simple and creating an iconography as well to kind of go, this is, these guys don't really look like penguins, but people who see it say, yeah, that's a penguin. I can see it in there and see that they're talking to each other. And thereafter, it's puns, parodies, all the dad jokes and Christmas cracker jokes you could ever want, and just keeps on going.
So say, I when I was quite young, I think I was at uni. I tried to do bits and pieces using this 3-panel process, and I'm not massively funny. So, and I how that must be quite a tricky process. Like you say, you're trying to run. You said that you try to run them daily.
Yep.
Yeah. How tricky is it to try and put something together?
So, in terms of the way that I operate, and there are no new jokes. There are very few, and I try to make up some every now and again myself. But a lot of the time, it is about saying that you're going to beg, steal, and borrow from something else that you've seen that's funny, or rework it. And what I end up doing is I penguinize it in that sense, and it's then about also changing the funny, if you like, to be right. How do you make it so it's pitch, swing, hit in terms of the 3 panels, and actually you would go there. And with that, it is just about saying, right, let's try little themes within the piece. So I might say, right, come up with something about, or somebody's talking about a circus, and somebody talks about something that's funny about a circus. I would then maybe try and write down 6 or 7 ideas about a circus, and then say, right, how do I make each one of those funny, or do something? Because sometimes it's not just funny. Sometimes it can be just do something arty with it. So when I did the circus one, for example, you can do a trapeze artist who then swings across the 3 panels in terms of how they sort of bounce across. Or you might have it as just have a clown car, and all you've got is all the different penguins dressed up as clowns trying to get in that car. So it's not necessarily an outright joke, but it is that amusing piece in terms of just how you go along. Does mean as well when you move to the actual books, you're then reading them in little themes, and also moving into that sort of rolling approach of, while it might not be hilariously funny for each individual strip, you've got that piece where you just get somebody bouncing along going, this is amused, there's a really funny one, amused, and you keep people just bouncing along.
That's very newspapery, isn't it? That's kind of
entirely the advantage you've got being on the internet, not having to fit to a specific newspaper space, is that you can then do other things that completely break the 3 panels. So one of my favorite strips where I did that was, you have months and months of 3-panel strips, and then suddenly you have a strip that comes along and goes, tell me more about this game you call Tetris. So it's actually a 4-panel strip done in the shape of an L.
Yeah.
Now that in itself is not funny at all, but because everyone's used to a 3-panel strip, and suddenly you've created an L-shaped strip talking about Tetris, it's become funny. Yeah. And so it's about creating those rhythms, creating the rhythm within the 3 panels, going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then every now and again going, break that rhythm, because the breaking of the rhythm is actually what's funny.
Yeah.
So and it's just about having that mix of going, right, do something arty, do something that's just outright rubbish dad joke, do something that's that trip up clever think it about piece. I think one of the ones I did recently was about the Bolton had fallen out of the market of comics, and basically it was having the 3 panels but having the penguins just the layer below standing on the bottom line of the panel border because it had fallen through. And again, in itself not particularly funny, but as part of the ensemble it becomes funny.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm saying it's, and it's one of these. It's the thing I'm missing most this year in terms of not having conventions, etc. Is the beauty of somebody picking up one of your books at a convention table, and because they literally can read the way the books are designed, you can open them at any page, read 2 or 3 minutes, put it back down again. Seeing somebody pick it up and I'm not necessarily engaging with them, but suddenly you start to see them having a wee laugh or their shoulders are shaking. You kind of go, I've got a reaction out of you. That has actually achieved what I set out to do.
Yeah.
I've got this thing where I say, oh, my aim every day for the Penguin is to make one person smile. And if I can do that, then I've done proud. But to actually get that immediate reaction when you're at a con and see somebody go, yes, I get this, it's funny, and that's what it's all about for me.
That's amazing. That's quite.
I think you're one of the few. Sorry, I think you're one of the few people that's actually doing that kind of stuff and going to cons. There's not so many people doing the kind of traditional 3-panel cartoon strips. It's mostly long format type stuff that you see. So you're kind of unique in that respect. I wonder, you obviously have penguins are your main characters, and you have variations on that in their egg or the little fluffy, baby penguins and stuff. Yeah, but have you ever featured any other animals or celebrities or creatures?
So, yes to all of the above. There was one point in time in the story where one of the penguins decided to go for a trip round the zoo and basically meet lots of different animals around the zoo. And that could, they went and had pizza with the turtles, for example, or they, met an elephant who didn't forget them, and all, where you can do all that sort of stuff. It is that flip as well, where at times I try to write the penguin or draw it certainly in such a way that I recognise that when people are reading each individual panel, they're probably spending a maximum of 2 seconds on a panel, right? Because it's ding, 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 ding. So there's a bit of me that goes, yes, I can put effort in and spend hours and hours over an individual panel. And from time to time I will, and I'll maybe draw a nice detailed animal. I think there's one that I did not that long ago actually, where it was a case of a really simply drawn fluffy thing next to one of the penguins, and he goes, "Are you a weasel?" And eventually the last panel is, "I'm totally different," right? So that sort of bad jokes, yes. And I did spend a lot of effort drawing a very precise still, and that's fine because again it worked as the joke to say, look, you're having to have the payoff to flip it back. So I do put other animals in. People have asked me in the past, why penguins? And it's a case of I always knew that the books were going to be in black and white, and I'm not very good at drawing zebras. So that's kind of why I have to stick with penguins.
Great answer. I wonder, what do you read yourself? Do you read comics or other comic strips?
Yeah, no, I've... so my history in comics goes... it goes all the way back to, Albino and Dandy days, and then... towards the end of the late 80s, I started to get into comics big time, just before the big Batman boom from 89. I was a DC boy rather than a Marvel boy, but that's just the way it happens. Got into all sorts of comics from that. Started going to conventions back in the days when Bristol had a big convention, and which was about year 2000 or thereabouts, and we're doing loads of conventions through that. Started to see more and more, when you start doing the convention circuit, you start to see people going, well, hang on, this person's producing their own book. And eventually you get to the point where you go, I can do better than that. And there was kind of a mix of going well, or I can do as good as that. And saying, right, let's give this a go, let's have a crack at it. And then one thing just led to another, and suddenly when you set yourself, to me, doing comics or you're making comics, you should always try and set limitations, and then say, because it's pushing against those boundaries that actually creates the creativity. So by saying, right, the limitation I have is to try and produce something every day, that in itself suddenly creates a limitation to go, well, you have to get through this, you have to compress the idea down to fit 3 panels. You then have to compress it in such a way that you can get it out on a daily basis. And that sparks a lot of activity in terms of how to get there. Because otherwise, anytime I've tried to do something long form, I just procrastinate forever and get nowhere with it.
Yeah.
There are bits and bobs out there, but not where I've done other things, but not an awful lot. So that's how I got into comics, and I'm a huge fan of the Shadow, and I've an awful lot of shadow art, or art by various comic artists who have drawn The Shadow up on comicartfans.com. And that was a big thing for me.
That's
Okay,
interesting.
that's cool.
So is The Shadow Alan Moore? Yeah. Did I make that
No.
up? No.
You're hugely wrong with that.
Way
So
back.
the Shadow is a character that actually predates Batman by some way. It's a pulp character created around about the same time as Doc Savage. My coming to it again was about 1990 when DC produced a book called The Shadow Strikes, illustrated by the late Eduardo Barreto. But there was also DC books from the early 70s by Mike Kaluta and Denny O'Neil, which are absolutely stunning. And then there's a variety of other books. Most recently, it came out through Dynamite, but the character's been passed around various comic companies. But there's also radio shows. There was a film. There's been all sorts, and promise of much more to come.
I apologise. I actually, when you said The Shadow, I thought I was thinking The Spirit, and that was Frank Miller. So
That's wrong.
The right character or the right writer there.
Well, the Spirit's Will Eisner as well, so we'll get there at the end though. Frank Miller did the Spirit movie, but that's
it's a horrible movie, by the way. No, Dynamite are really clever at that. I think, again, strike me down for getting my facts wrong, but Dynamite brought back Peter Cannon last year, which was really smart as well. That's. I think as a company, Dynamite did the $6 Million Man series that came out last year as well. They're quite proficient at looking for long-rested IP and trying to do something different and interesting with them. So that's pretty cool that they've done stuff with other things as well.
Yeah, and they had the Green Hornet for a while. But as a company, they have issues of late, but that's for somewhere else.
We haven't got to that conversation yet. So you've got a Kickstarter running.
I do.
Do you want to talk a wee bit about that?
So, actually, I have one of the printer's proofs here. Let's come in. So, Coincidence is the most recent book from the Penguin. What I basically do is I've got a template that says, right, fill in 100 pages. When I filled up 100 pages, take it to Kickstarter and let's do sort of pre-ordering to get it funded and get out and about. So it's 100 pages, which is about 180 of the different comic strips. There are tiers available where you can also get some of the original art. You can get the limited edition T-shirt, and if you really feel so inclined, you can get yourself the back catalogue of the Penguin as well, which weighs an absolute ton. So therefore, the postage isn't ideal on that, but that's the way it goes. So yeah, it's been launched for just over a week now or thereabouts, and we're through Target. We're through the. I always say as well, you've got your target and then you've got your real target, and I'm through the real target as well. So I'm happy with that. It's a hobby for me, so therefore it's great to get anything back. And the primary purpose for using Kickstarter is to say, right, let's get some pre-orders in. Kickstarter has allowed me to engage with people around the world that I would never engage with otherwise. I can actually say I'm big in Finland.
Yeah.
For some reason, I've got three or four backers from Finland, or in the past, I've had 3 or 4 backers from Finland, and I've got like 3 or 4 backers from Germany as well. For some bizarre reason, the Germans like the Penguin, which is good. And again, we've been all over the States with. We've now actually managed through all the different Kickstarters. We've gone from Hawaii on one side all the way around to New Zealand on the other. So it's been great from that perspective of having to stretch it across the whole globe.
It's quite amazing. We've talked about this in the show before about just kind of where you're. It is exciting when you start to get. Obviously, Colin's got quite a proficient Kickstarter back catalogue, and I've had one book that's gone through Kickstarter. It's quite amazing actually, just because it's a global thing. It opens up a global community to your work. It's actually quite amazing where interest kind of lies. Colin, where have you got? What's your favorite? What's your favorite like recurrent or interesting place that's come up in a Kickstarter?
Oh boy, yeah, I've had them all over as well. Australia, New Zealand, lots of states. Philippines is probably the most unusual. No, Vietnam actually. I had somebody a backer from Vietnam. That's unusual. Who has, I think, returned several times.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, a lot of Baltic countries like Finland and Estonia and places as well. But I think they're partly to do with probably because of my war comics. There's quite an interest in World War II in that area. So
You say your submarine comic, Flight of the Eagle must. You were saying that got quite a good response in the Baltics, did it not?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was where a lot of the story was set. So yeah.
My favourite one is it's in the state of Michigan, and it's just because it's a township. Like it's not. I don't know what I don't know what categorizes. I don't know what's the difference between a town or just the fact that you call where you come from a township. But it's like I can't even remember the name of the place, but it was like something township rather than like the fact that got added to the actual title excites me a wee bit.
Yeah.
And Paradise Springs as well. That just sounds like I don't know where Paradise Springs is. I think it's in Colorado, but it's like one of the nicest sounding places ever.
I'm pretty sure I've had a Paradise Springs as well. So whoever that is maybe somebody who's just on Kickstarter that backs all the comics.
Yeah, maybe there are people who are like that everybody knows because they back every comic Kickstarter. Yeah. I had a bizarre experience the last time with Kickstarter, and that I was writing out an envelope with an address somewhere in the States, and I was thinking a total deja vu, going, I've written this address before. It must be a previous backer. But it wasn't until I went and sorted them out later on, I found I had two backers who lived in the same street somewhere in the States, and that was just bizarre to me. There's a coincidence for you.
Yeah. Well, I've had that as well, where it's quite clearly been somebody's handed it over to a friend and then they've backed the next one.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. The last time I had a proper dream moment of, well, if you win the lottery, but because I mapped out on Google Maps all the postcodes of all the backers, which meant you could actually. I had a really nice route all the way down the east coast of America that I could then have gone across through Texas and up via California up to Colorado, and I was like, well, you could. But what's the postage cost versus actually hiring the Winnebago and doing the tour and delivering them all by hand? That would be
wow. But the Penguin Trail.
That sounds absolutely amazing.
It's one of those where if the lottery numbers had come in that week, then perhaps I would have said, I know what I'm doing.
I did mine on foot. Obviously, my Kickstarter that I did was it was a lot of local. It was a lot of friends and things like that, and people obviously people that call in like the local comic shop in Dunfermline had sort of pointed people in the direction of. So I had I did mine on foot one Saturday afternoon. I just put all my comics in a bag and jogged it. And in fairness, it was like 12 miles, and it wasn't the shortest of treks. But I like that. I like your Winnebago idea though. The Penguin route sounds much more exciting than the Spirit of Winky run. So. Yeah, what's next? What have you got coming up after?
So, in terms of the things that are going on at the moment, I recently had I submitted a script off to Sarah Durkington, who does Pause for Thought. She also did the Mulp book. So she's recently drawn a 4-page strip that I put out with her. So that's all about the theory of the difference between cats and dogs, where dogs are toddlers and cats are teenagers. Beyond that, that's all you need to know. So that's kicking about and looks lovely in terms of what she did. The thought process I have as well at the moment with regard to the penned Guin, I say it goes out daily. It's probably a new one 4 or 5 days a week rather than daily. But I'm also about 300 away from 2,000 actually daily strips. In terms of the way, if you see them on Twitter or Instagram, you'll see that they're actually numbered S 7:10 or something. I think it was today's. So 17:10. So that's the 1710th daily strip. So that probably means I'm about a year away from 2000. So I really need to start thinking now, how do I build towards 2000? Because we really should do something celebratory for that in some ways. So I just need to think about planning that through. But beyond that, it's just about saying, look, this is a daily strip, so you just keep going at it and playing around with the idea and the concepts and saying, there's stuff there that as long as people keep enjoying it, I'll keep producing it, all being well. So yeah. And hopefully get back to the convention scene and actually getting out and meeting people and pressing the flesh with it as well.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to that. Until then, we'll just have to sit and drink beer, and I think we're all drinking beer tonight, aren't we?
We are.
So, so we'll let people know what we're drinking tonight. Alan, you can kick off.
So I've just got. Well, where's my camera? I've got some Brewdog, and they're Lost Lager. This is the old can design, and they've recently changed the can designs, but they are doing a special deal that said they were getting rid of the old can design, get them cheap. So they're all within date, so nobody can complain about that. So yeah, I'm a Brewdog member, so I get my discount when I'm in the bar or using their online shop, so that's an advantage as well.
We'll have to invite you along to one of our live events then. We did go to Edinburgh and ended up in the Brewdog with a bunch of other comic creators. So we'll remember and invite you along next time.
Yeah, you get 5% off.
That was nice when that the Lothian Road Brewdog's really nice. We went to the one in Cowgate in Edinburgh as well, but I do prefer the Lothian Road. The Lothian Road one. It's got this nice open courtyardy bit. It's really nice. Yeah, a lot of space upstairs as well. It was really good. The Cowgate one's quite tight.
The Cowgate one's very tight. I was at a stag do, and we ended up in the Brewdog there. And there's one of the beers that's really strong, really high alcohol, and they only serve it in like little glasses. Anybody? I don't know what it's called. Can't remember. But
it's a Brewdog one, is it?
Aye, yeah. But there was a bunch of guys in, and they'd gone up to the bar to get pints of this, and they're like, "Oh no, you're not allowed pints." So the guy was like, "Ha, we'll just order like 3 each then." And he had this huge tray of stuff, and he was really loud. They were all laughing and stuff, and they were a bit obnoxious. So this guy had these trays of like all these little drinks, and he turned back to go back to his mates and fell over and took the whole lot everywhere.
What was it? Tactical Nuclear Penguin?
There's a penguin drink they've got, so it could be that one.
Maybe, yeah. It was really strong anyway, but they only served it in little ones.
Yeah.
So Jeff, what are you drinking tonight?
What am I drinking? I'm drinking one of my favourite local brewery beers, Cool Brewing. They're Baby Badger, which, if memory serves, we reviewed in episode 3-ish, and I think it was possibly beer of the week that week. I might be wrong. I say memory might be betraying me a wee bit, but it's amazing. It's a 4.4% pale ale. It's just nice. Cool Brewing do really awesome, drinkable summery beers. They're one of my go-tos when the weather's really nice or really warm, and it has been both those things in Dunfermline this week. So, and they're pals as well, so you can't really complain when if you're friends with folk that make really awesome beer, then you're in for a good time. What are you drinking,
nice. I picked up this from Comerty Brewing at the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant. So it's called Raptor, American hops, Equinox, Simcoe, nice IPA, slightly hazy, so it's got that kind of slightly sort of New England thing about it.
Oh, lovely.
5.5%, very nice, very palatable.
Yeah. That's lovely. Like I think through the whole process of doing this podcast, if I'm really struggling for what I want to drink, and I've even passed it on to my wife, if you can get the word NIPA and then anything above like 5%, it's going to be on the right beer. love a New England IPA, man. I'm actually.
I've got a New England double IPA in the fridge at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
from Overtone. I think it's called Oofed.
Oh yeah,
it's about 8 or 9%. So I've yet to have it, but I'm saving it up for a
do you
good
want, I've got for the next time we decide to do a podcast back like old style with us sitting next to each other again. I'm gonna go get the can while you guys blather, because actually I grabbed it. I was like, that's a live show. What beer? I'll go and grab it.
Okay. Oh well, I'm intrigued, Alan, if it's what he's going to bring.
And how's your comic creating going as well?
Oh, busiest ever. To be quite honest, I've not stopped all summer. I mean, I work in education, so I've had a long summer holidays, but I've just been writing and drawing, so quite a lot of commissions and stuff. So been very busy.
I grabbed two. Probably speaks for kind of how I buy my beer now. But I grabbed two when I went back to the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant. Last Thursday was the first day that you could go back in and be in the shop. And I talked about this for a wee while with Colin, and I didn't actually realise. So throughout lockdown, we've been able to order from our local beer shop, but it's been done via, admittedly not the most enjoyable shopping experience, but you would send out a list, like a literal list of the beers, the brewery and the beers, and you would write down the ones you wanted and then send the list back. And I didn't realise until I was in the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant last week how much my beer shopping is visual. And I think the can art reflects that slightly. I got Basqueland, who are I can't actually remember where Basqueland are from. I think they're a foreign brewery, but I got one of their I got a couple of their beers in the past, and I really enjoyed them. So for a future podcast, I bought a Zumo Hazy IPA, 6%, based on this stunning can art. It's just, and also again an IPA from Mason's Brewing Company in Maine, the USA. It's an IPA which it's 5.7% hazy IPA, and it's called Hipster Apocalypse.
Amazing. I've just realised I've got a bottle I want to share with you as well, particularly because Alan's here.
Fair enough. You'll have a penguin on it, surely, in this case. So you're a sucker for packaging, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, but then I'm a comic fan as well, and the reason we started this podcast was because me and Colin met on a previous podcast and became really good friends. But we're both in Dunfermline. We're both frequenters of the Local Shop of Heroes, which is our local book shop. And in the same street, the Maygate in Dunfermline, they opened the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchant opened a couple doors down. So right next to our friendly local neighbourhood comic shop, they're opened up
neighbourhood beer shop. Yeah.
That's for me personally, and I think for Colin, that's a massive part of my shopping experience. And actually, both shop owners are really, really good people who are really really good to my children. So on a Saturday, my wife also owns a shop in the High Street in Dunfermline. Right. Just on the High Street, sorry. So I have kind of a pathway on a Saturday where I'll take my youngest, who's 5. It's 4. He'll be 5 in November. But we'll go through the parks to my wife's shop, and then we'll weave our way through the high streets down to the comic shop and the beer shop, and then we'll go to the park again. So it's like there's kind of a route in Dunfermline you can take. And I didn't realise until, like I was saying there, I didn't realise how much I missed not actually being able to go into the shop and selecting cans. And yeah, I'm a total stickler for packaging. I put this up on the screen very quickly before Colin chats away. Kelly Ann Marr, who is mother of young comic prodigy Drew Marr, is asking you if you're a Dundee United fan.
No, I'm a Lions fan, I'm afraid, supporting the Livingston. But that's because I actually go all the way back to Meadowbank Thistle. I was also their bank manager at one point in time when they were moving from Meadowbank out to Livingston. So no, I've always kept an eye on the Lions.
When I was a kid, my granddad used to live in just outside of Holyrood Park in one of the flats sort of between Meadowbank and Holyrood Park. And he used to take me to games, depending on who was playing at home, and it was either Meadowbank, Thistle, or Hibs. So I've got a soft spot for Livingston because of their move. And I had a wee soft spot for Edinburgh. Is it Edinburgh? United?
Edinburgh City, or the
that's the one.
That and the Spartans. But no, it's it was one of those ones growing up in Edinburgh. You had to pick a team, but I wasn't maroon or green, so I thought stuff. I'll just to sit on the fence. I'll go Meadowbank Thistle, and then as I say, ended up being their bank manager for a bit, which is weird. And then when they moved out to Livingston, I was involved in a bit of that as well from the banking side, which was a bit different. So no, I presume she's looking at the T-shirt and assuming it's Arab related, but no, that was not the intent. I say it's Shea Guin Vara. That's what it is. You see, just got to stick with the bad jokes. You got to stick with the bad jokes.
Totally. Play the gimmick, right, Colin? What's your beer?
Well, I didn't go out and buy this specially. Right, I actually got this for my birthday last week, so it is a coincidence. But Williams Brothers have March the Penguins. So you can pick this up in Aldi, that sort of place. I think it's a stout, I think. So I haven't had it yet, obviously. But
I think I've got that as well. I didn't know that's where you were going with this.
I presume it's going to be Penguin related. Yeah. It is one of those ones where the number of times that I've been introduced, or again at an event where somebody's going, I can't remember Alan's name, but this is the Penguin guy, and I'm like, yeah, I've been called worse.
It's worse things to be known by, isn't there? Okay, so if people would like to follow your work, where can we go? So
go into any form of social media, basically, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, and just search for Penned Guin, as it's spelled on the screen there, and it will come up. And you'll one strip a day goes up on most of the different social media pieces. They're all at different stages of saying different things. The Twitter account is actually a little bit older. If you want the new stuff on Twitter, it's at Shadow1972, which is my personal account. But the biggest number of reactions at the moment seems to be Instagram. That's where people seem most comfortable at following these things. And again, I like it there because people are just scrolling through their Instagram account and suddenly come across a 3-panel strip and just stop for a second.
Awesome.
Superb, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been really nice to have you.
No, it's been great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Amazing.
Very welcome. It's been great having you.
Okay, speak to you all soon then.
Bye.
Right. Bye for now.
Cheers.
Bro.
Awesome.
How are you, Colin? What have you been reading this week?
What have I been reading this week? I picked out a couple of books I actually read last week because I've been a bit busy drawing and then getting back to work this week. So I think you've read this as well. The 2000 AD sci-fi special.
Yeah, I've just finished it actually. I know I talked a wee bit about it last week, but yeah, I just finished it this week and it was pretty fabulous actually.
Yeah, I think it beats the weekly prog. Quite enjoyed it. There's a few old characters make a little reappearance. Some old and new strips in there. I liked it. And the humour's in there that's kind of missing from the weekly prog, I thought. So I thought I'd give that a little mention. So folk will find this in their shops just now. W.H. Smith will have it. I think it's about $7.99, I think.
Yeah, about there. No, I did really, really, really enjoy it, and actually, encouraged you because obviously the whole thing was like, I think the gimmick was that like it was sort of pre and post Rebellion takeover.
That's right. Yes, 20 years since Rebellion took over. 2000 AD, bought it up from whoever it was. Egmont, I think, had it. Previous to that, it was like Fleetway and IPC. So yeah, 20 years. So they've had it kind of long, in their hands longer than anybody else.
Yeah, that was good. I really enjoyed it. I think you sometimes with anthologies, the comics are kind of hit. Some of the stories can be quite regrettably hit or miss. But I didn't feel that when I was watching. I didn't feel that at all when I was watching. Not when I was watching, when I was reading that. I didn't feel. I felt I enjoyed most of the things. There was a couple that I enjoyed a wee bit more, but there was nothing in there that was like. I really liked the. There was a murder mystery one that the with the symbol, and it was like who'd murdered.
Oh yeah.
I really liked that one, and I quite liked. I'm a fan anyway. Sinister Dexter, the two hitmen.
The bullet time story is good.
That was really clever. I thought that was really well done with the counting the bullets as it went on.
That's right. Yeah, there's no dialogue in it because it's all just a slowed down exchange of gunfire and explanations of the shells that are being fired, what they hit or don't hit. It's really clever.
Yeah, it was good. What else have you been reading?
Another one, I picked up this one when I was away. So I was away for a few days the week that I wasn't on the show. And I visited the local comic shop where I was, and I picked up this one, The Storyteller, Ghosts. I don't know do you remember The Storyteller on TV, Jeff?
No.
Nah, I'm guessing it's about
my wife has entered the kitchen. She's just off camera. Claire's just off camera, and she's nodding. Did you not put a thing up on Facebook about The Storyteller? And that really, no, that was it? No, that was Box of Delights. Sorry, I'm getting my 80 shite telly mixed up.
So The Storyteller was Jim Henson, the Muppet Sesame Street guy. I think it was 80s, maybe early 90s. Certainly when I was later teens, I think, because I didn't really watch it too much, but my younger brothers did. And basically it was John Hurt, the actor John Hurt, dressed up as the storyteller character, and he would sit by the fire with his loyal dog. His dog was a puppet, a bit like the dog from Fraggle Rock, if you remember that at all. And he would tell a story in front of the fire, and it would go off into a puppet based, or sometimes mixture of puppets and live action based story. So they brought it back as a comic book maybe a few years ago now, and this is the latest kind of arc or series, which is particularly ghost stories. So when I picked this up, I think issue 3 out of the 4 was just out, but I only picked up this first one just to see what it was like. I was just intrigued, and it follows the format. He's sitting at the fire, and then he happens to use a word, myling, myling, and the dog asks, "What's that? What's a myling?" And he goes on to explain what it is. And a myling is a ghost, but it's a ghost of a baby. And he goes on to tell this story about twins being born to a couple, and the father of the man isn't happy about it, and he sends the women and the children off into the forests in the winter, and they get left in the snow and the ice, and one of them dies, but the other one survives, gets picked up by a traveller and brought up by a traveller. So it's that. So that's the start of the story. But then he goes on to then encounter this myling ghost of his twin, which is quite an intriguing little story.
This is good. So, is that an ongoing? Is it going to be ongoing? Is it?
No, it's 4-parter. So different stories, different story each time.
Okay.
And like I said, this is part 1, but there's 4 in total. I think the fourth one's probably out about now, or fairly soon, if it's not already out.
Yeah.
Try to see who publishes that. Archaia, but that's part of another bigger company, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Anyway.
I hate when that happens. You're like, yeah.
It's Boom Studios, I think. I think it's
Boom, yeah. Boom. I like Boom.
Yeah, but it comes under this Archaia name. But I think it's Boom that ultimately publishes it. So, yeah, very interesting wee story. Not particularly scary, but I guess it's aimed at probably kids more than adults. But an interesting sort of folklore type story, set in the past, set in the kind of countryside. And, I quite enjoyed it. Probably not enough to go and pick up the rest, because it's not really my kind of thing, but good all the same. Some people will enjoy it, I'm sure.
Awesome, man. It's nice just to pick up something totally random sometimes, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let me see what. I left upstairs because I read it last night just before I went to my bed. But I found I'm sharing it just now. Because I found the Kickstarter page, which has closed since you. But you lent me Camp VA07 #1.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get writer James McCulloch on the podcast really soon. So I think, James wrote one of my favourite comics last year. One of my favourite comics I read last year, which is called "The Forest, the Chair, and Those That Reside There." A really complex, quite challenging, and really and quite scary comic about mental health and sort of the visual representation of that. And I really enjoyed it. It felt really personal. So yeah, I was really quite excited when. Obviously, we've been talking to James, and we're hopefully going to get him on a podcast really quite soon. But also, I was quite excited to have access to this because I did miss the Kickstarter. It was running around about the same time as mine, and I just as a result, my mind was off the ball. But then, obviously, you've got a copy, and you let me have a little look at it, and it's quite a complicated story. One I really enjoyed, where there's a bit of a famine. There's a crisis on Earth that's going to result in the end of our species, and the solution seems to be that a group of aliens have offered to try and support humans through this crisis, but they're asking for quite a horrible thing in return. This is #1. Obviously, it's going down the Kickstarter route, so. I imagine it's going to be one of those series. It's going to, we're going to have to wait quite a while for the next part.
I think the second one is coming to Kickstarter soon. Last time I spoke to James, he said it would be coming fairly soon before the end of the year.
But yeah, a really fascinating series, beautifully drawn, really intriguing. That first issue is obviously building towards a couple of. It's building the story. There's a couple of quite. I don't want to ruin anything because it's quite interesting. It's a really interesting. Issue 1 and one that I really enjoyed, and if I go too much into the story, I think I would, people wouldn't be intrigued to buy it. But there's quite a few little gut punches in the first issue, quite a lot of intrigue and world building, but with a couple of quite nasty little twists in it that make you think, oh, this is different. And yeah, my understanding is. It's getting a lot of really positive feedback in comic circles just because it's a new take on something that has been talked about before. How would humans deal with the upcoming possibility of extinction? It reminded me a wee bit of like Interstellar mixed with it had a vibe, that film Interstellar that came out with Matthew McConaughey a couple of years ago, directed by the Dark Knight guy who's named Christopher Nolan. Sorry, reminded me that a weird mix, that Christopher Nolan film, and some sort of alien invasion-y kind of thing movie, kind of rolled into one. It was just really cool, a really interesting concept, and I read issue 1 this week and really enjoyed that. So, and
yeah, we're hoping that we'll have James on soon, maybe even next week.
People
I have been talking to, so James McCulloch, Craig Payton, who is the artist on Kiltopia, was the artist on Kiltopia, issues 1 and 2. He's going to be launching a Kickstarter soon for his own art book. I think that's imminent. So, Craig said he'll come on the show and have a chat with us as well. We're hoping to have Monty Nero as well. I had a brief chat with Monty. Monty's hard at work, I think, on the next Death Sentence, which is just kind of big comic that initially came out through Titan, but he's since gone down the Kickstarter route with the current series. Of that. He's also got an art book out as well, and a bunch of other comics. I think I maybe loaned you his Hollow Monsters.
You did. I've just not got it. It's top of my reading pile as we speak.
So that's an intriguing little story for sure.
Awesome.
So that's where we've been talking to recently. So hopefully those will be joining us soon. And anybody else that's got a Kickstarter probably coming, we'll aim for. I should have in my hands within the week issue 2 of the 77. So the retro, mostly sci-fi, but not quite 2000 AD alike comic. They're trying to make it each episode come out every 2 months. So there is going to be a Kickstarter very soon, before the end of August, for issue 3, which is quite exciting. So they're really ramping up production and trying to get it out every 2 months, which is good because there's ongoing stories there. And it's difficult, kind of keeping up with these things when there's a long period. Awesome. So we might have that for review next week. So we'll see.
Exciting times. Awesome. Well, we'll see everyone next week then.
Right. Cheers.